Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I stood on the stage, my heart racing. The spotlight was blinding, but I didn't mind. Today was my day. The years of late nights, textbooks scattered all over my apartment, my mind consumed by case law and legal jargon, all of it had paid off. I had earned this moment. And yet, as I looked out at the sea of faces in the audience, one thing stood out more than anything else. My father. He was in the front row, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on me with a mixture of skepticism and what? Dismissiveness? I could feel it even from where I stood. He knew exactly what to say and when. As I walked off the stage, feeling the weight of my degree, he stood up and clapped, but his voice sliced through the air before I could even make it to the stairs. Finally, he said, his words loud enough for everyone to hear. Now we won't have to keep supporting you. Maybe now you can finally start contributing to the family business. I froze, the warm, celebratory air turning cold. My stomach dropped. I knew what he meant, but it didn't make it hurt any less. My mother, Helen, added in her usual passive-aggressive tone, "It's about time you started pulling your weight around here." And then Matt, my older brother, chimed in, not missing a beat. You know, if you'd actually helped with the business instead of focusing on whatever you were doing, we wouldn't be in half the mess we're in. I wanted to scream. It wasn't enough that I'd been busting my ass to get this law degree. No, my entire existence had to be defined by the fact that I hadn't contributed to their real estate empire. The one they thought was their success, when the truth was, well, I had been funding it. No one knew. They didn't know that the investments they took for granted were my money. My earnings from side deals, my quiet support, had kept their business afloat when it was on the brink of collapse. They thought it was luck or their brilliance in the market. But it was me. I swallowed hard, clenching my jaw. I wasn't just the screw-up they liked to paint me as. I was the one who'd kept them standing all this time. But no one could see it. No one would ever see it. I glanced at the proud smiles of the other graduates, hearing their families cheer them on. The pride in their voices, the warmth. Not for me. Not anymore. I had nothing to say. So, I simply walked off the stage, my victory sour in my throat. I didn't go straight home after the ceremony. I couldn't. My legs moved, but my mind was somewhere else. Somewhere far away from that goddamn stage, my father's voice still ringing in my ears. Finally, they won't have to keep supporting you. It made me sick. I was standing there, wearing this shiny, expensive piece of paper that said I had earned a law degree, and yet I was still just that daughter. That burden. The irony hit me like a brick. I had kept them afloat, and they still couldn't see me for who I was. They thought their real estate empire was built on their skill, their intelligence. But all that so-called success was because of my quiet contributions, my savings, my investments, my sacrifice. I hadn't told them any of it. Not one word. It felt pathetic, but at the same time, it felt right. No one asked, so I never offered the truth. And maybe that was on me, but there had to be a limit to what I could give. I wasn't going to sit around for the rest of my life watching them treat me like a leech while I funded their dreams. I pulled into my apartment complex, the one I'd rented with my first paycheck from the law firm. It was small, plain, but it was mine. No one could take this from me. As I locked the door behind me, the weight of what I needed to do settled on my shoulders. I didn't have time to sit around feeling sorry for myself. The only way to cut this cord was to do it cleanly and quickly. I dialed my financial advisor, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey, it's Emily," I said, trying not to sound like I was shaking inside. "I need to freeze all funds tied to the family business. Effective immediately." There was a pause, then the familiar voice of Barry, my advisor, responded. "You sure? That's a pretty big step, Em. You want to discuss this first." "I don't need to discuss it," I said, cutting him off. "Just make it happen. Freeze it. All of it. Right now. You got it. I'll get the ball rolling. You sure this is what you want?" "I'm sure," I said, my voice hard. "Just do it." The line clicked, and I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was done. That was the first step. But it wasn't enough. I had to make it official. I called my lawyer next. Andrew had handled the paperwork for my small business ventures over the years, but this was different. This wasn't about a side hustle or some LLC I was building, it was about cutting my family off. Andrew, I said when he picked up, I need you to start the process of pulling me out of everything. All my silent partnerships, all my investments, every penny I've ever put into that goddamn business. I want it out. He didn't hesitate. Understood. You'll have the paperwork within the next few hours. Is there anything else you need? No, I said, tightening my grip on the phone. I need you to make it clean. No trace of me left. You got it. I'll make sure it's handled. When I hung up, I felt a little lighter, but the tension was still there, crawling under my skin. I knew what was coming next. The fallout. My family would be furious. The thought made me sick, but at least I wouldn't have to listen to them pretend anymore. They wouldn't get to keep feeding me their lies and acting like I didn't have anything to offer. I looked at the clock, still early. Time to prep for tomorrow. My first day at the new firm. I felt a pang of excitement, but it was quickly buried under the heaviness of everything else. The firm was my chance to finally build something for myself. I was pulling away from everything I knew, everything that had defined me for so long. But it was the only way to escape their control. As I was finishing getting ready, my phone buzzed. It was my mom, Emily. Her voice came through the speaker, a little tight. We're having some trouble with the business. Can you help us out? It's just a small loan, just to get us through the next couple of weeks until the deal closes. I bit back a laugh. A small loan. I knew exactly what she meant. A few $100,000 if they were lucky. I didn't even flinch. No, Mom. I can't. I'm sorry. Her silence was deafening. What do you mean, no? You know how important this is. You've always helped us. Why are you turning your back now? Because I can't help you anymore, I said, my voice tight but clear. I'm not doing this. I'm done. Another long silence, and then she spoke again, the hurt in her voice cutting through the line. You're really going to leave us like this? After everything. After everything, I confirmed. The call ended with a click. I stared at the screen for a moment before tossing the phone on my bed. It was done. Now, I just had to prepare for the shitstorm that was coming. The phone call to Barry had been quick, sharp, and final. It felt good. A weight had already begun to lift off my shoulders. One part of the plan down. Next was Andrew, my lawyer. I dialed his number, listening to the ring tone as I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar on my blouse. I couldn't help but feel like a stranger to myself, like I was putting on this whole new persona. One that wasn't the daughter of a man who thought I owed him everything. Emily? Andrew answered. How's it going? I need you to start the process of pulling out my investments, I said, getting straight to it. Every silent partnership. Every cent that's been funneled into the family business. Pull it all. Are you sure? He asked, a little caution in his voice. I'm sure, I said. I don't need any of it connected to me anymore. I'm cutting it off. Completely. All right, I'll handle it. It'll take a little time, but I'll make sure everything is pulled and it's clean. You know what you're doing, right? I paused. I did, but that didn't make it feel any less like a gut punch. I know what I'm doing. Okay, I'll get the ball rolling. We hung up and I exhaled deeply. The decisions I was making felt like a line being drawn in the sand, one I wouldn't be able to erase. A quick glance at the clock showed I had about an hour before I had to head to the office for my first day at the firm. I had everything planned out, leave the family behind, cut the ties, step into my future. And yet, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from my dad. We're thinking about booking a trip to Italy in a few weeks. It's been a while since we took a proper vacation. Let me know if you want to join us. I didn't respond. No need to pretend anymore. His carefree plans were exactly the kind of thing I'd been subsidizing for years. His idea of a vacation was me quietly funding their lavish lifestyle. I shoved the phone into my purse and grabbed my jacket, heading out the door. As soon as I stepped into the elevator, my phone rang again. This time, it was my mom. Emily, honey, we need to talk. Things are getting tight with the business, and I think you could really help us out with a small loan. Just until we get the next deal through. You've always been there for us, please. This won't take long, I promise. I leaned against the elevator wall, my fingers tightening around the phone. She had no idea. No idea what I'd already done. She thought this was just another request, like the dozens before. Another little favor that would get her off the hook. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. Mom, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. I can't. I'm not in a position to help right now. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then a soft, strained reply. What do you mean? You've always helped. You can't just leave us like this. I'm not leaving you, I said, my voice colder now. I just can't keep doing this. I can't keep being the one who bails you out every time things get tight. You need to figure this out without me. Another pause. I could hear her breathing, the sharp intake of air. You don't mean that, Emily. You're just upset. You've always been the one who understood. We're family. I'm still your family, I said, but the words felt hollow in my mouth. But I'm done. I can't keep giving to you when all you ever do is take. I don't understand, she whispered, and then the line went dead. I stood there, still holding the phone in my hand. A sick, satisfied feeling bubbled up inside me. I had finally said no. No more. I wasn't going to keep feeding into their delusion that I was some kind of financial safety net. They needed to stand on their own. They'd never treated me like anything but a resource. Well, now they'd get the consequences of that. The elevator chimed, and I stepped out, walking toward my car. I was almost there when I felt my phone buzz again. This time, it was my father. I didn't even look at the message. I knew what it would say, something about the vacation, some casual ask for me to chip in, or maybe even something worse, an attempt to make me feel guilty for not supporting the family. I wasn't interested. Tomorrow, I'd walk into the law firm and leave all of this behind. Today, I was taking the first step toward freedom. I woke up in my new apartment for the first time, the smell of fresh paint still lingering in the air. It was small, a modest one-bedroom, but it was mine. No one else had a say in it. No one was going to come into my space and make me feel like I owed them. The bare walls were a reminder of everything I was leaving behind and everything I was starting over with. The move had been quick. I didn't have much to pack, just a few boxes of books, some clothes, and a couple of pictures from the old apartment. I'd given up on most of the things that had anchored me to my past, including the family business. The ties were already cut. Now it was just a matter of making it stick. I'd only been settled in a few days before the phone calls started. The first one came from my dad, as I expected. He said, his tone more impatient than usual. We're hitting some problems over here. The business is facing some unexpected hurdles. Can you help us out with some legal issues? You know, just a couple of things we could use your expertise on. I took a breath, the words I had to say feeling heavy in my chest. Sorry, Dad. I'm really busy with work right now, and I can't take on anything else. There was a pause, a long one, like he was trying to figure out if I was serious. I know you're busy, but this is important. We're talking about the future of the business. Look, I said, my voice steady but cold. I can't do it. I'm focused on my new job. I've got enough on my plate without getting involved with the family business anymore. I heard him exhale, frustrated. You're really going to leave us hanging like this? After everything we've done for you? I didn't answer right away. The everything he was referring to wasn't exactly the support I needed. It was the same manipulation I'd heard all my life. I refused to be drawn into it. I'm sorry, Dad, I said, my voice firmer this time. But this is where I draw the line. You'll have to figure it out without me. There was another long pause before he hung up, and I let the silence fill the space. I wasn't sorry. I wasn't. The next call came from Matt, a few days later. His voice sounded tighter than usual, more on edge. Hey, Em. Something's off with the numbers. We've been looking at the books, and there's some irregular stuff going on. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? I almost laughed, but I caught myself. Instead, I kept my voice neutral. I have no idea, Matt. I haven't been involved with the business for months now. I wouldn't know anything about it. You're sure? Because he paused, clearly trying to make sense of it all. Look, I know you've been busy with the law firm, but if you have any insight, I really don't, Matt. I'm sorry. I wasn't sorry, but I said it anyway. Maybe you should talk to someone who actually handles the finances. You know, like Dad. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Yeah, right. Okay, I'll look into it. I hung up before he could keep going. I couldn't pretend to care anymore. The business was their problem now, not mine. The phone calls didn't stop. A day or two later, Mom rang me up, her voice just as tight as Matt's had been. She started, her tone trying to sound casual. We're running into a bit of a cash flow problem. Just some temporary issues. Could you maybe, just for a little while, help us out with a small loan? I felt a bitter laugh rising in my throat. A small loan? She didn't even realize what had already happened. She still thought I was the one who had come through for them when they hit a bump. I can't do that, Mom, I said, my voice firm. I've told you. I'm not involved anymore. Her silence on the other end was enough to confirm what I already knew. She didn't get it. She wouldn't. Not until it all came crashing down. But I wasn't going to be the one to catch them when it did. Emily, we've always been there for you, she said, her voice soft, almost pleading. Don't you think it's time for you to be there for us? The guilt trip didn't work. It just didn't. Mom, I can't. I've made my decision, I said, and I meant it. You need to figure this out without me. I don't understand, she said, her voice thick with confusion, and then the line went silent. I didn't have anything left to say to her. I sank into the couch, the phone still in my hand. The calls, the manipulations, they were all part of the same old cycle, the same old story. They were used to me bending, adjusting, always there when they needed me. But not anymore. I stared out the window, letting the afternoon light wash over me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt relief. Not the kind of relief you get when someone forgives you, but the kind that comes from shedding a weight you didn't even realize was crushing you. I was starting to like this life. My life. It was quiet. It was mine. And for the first time, it was real. It was a few weeks before I got the first sign that the family was starting to figure out what was happening. The calls had been quieter lately, less frequent. I'd stopped answering most of them. My dad had given up asking for loans, and Matt was too busy scrambling around trying to patch up the mess he didn't understand. But today was different. The phone rang, and the name on the screen was Matt. I braced myself, answering on the third ring. Emily, Matt's voice came through, tight and panicked. Have you seen the news? There's something going on with the business's finances. We've been getting calls from creditors. This isn't just about a bad quarter. This is bigger than we thought. Have you heard anything? My heart pounded. This was it. The storm was finally hitting. The crumbling empire was beginning to fall apart, and Matt was just now starting to notice the cracks. No, I said, keeping my voice calm, like I didn't feel the weight of everything crashing around me. I haven't heard anything. What's going on? There's something off, Em. I don't know what, but something's wrong. I don't understand how it could have happened so fast. He sounded desperate, almost like he was looking for someone to blame. Did Dad do something without telling me? Are you sure you didn't hear anything? I almost felt bad for him, but I didn't let it show. I don't know, Matt. You should probably talk to Dad about it. If things are that bad, maybe you can work it out together. I am talking to Dad, but something's wrong, I can feel it. It's like the whole foundation's shaking. Did you ever? He stopped himself, like he was about to ask something he knew I wouldn't answer. Never mind. I'll handle it. The call ended abruptly, but it didn't matter. I'd already made my decision. My part in all this was over, and no amount of scrambling was going to change that. I dropped my phone on the couch and stood by the window, watching the city below. In the distance, I could see the shadow of things crumbling that I wasn't going to fix. Not for them. Not anymore. The phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Andrew, my lawyer. It was short and to the point. Process is moving forward. Your investments are being liquidated. It's going to hit the family hard, but they'll be okay. I stared at the screen. The words were clear enough, but they didn't make it easier to breathe. The emotional weight of what I was doing crashed into me then, a reminder that this wasn't just a business decision, it was personal. I was about to destroy the only world my family had ever known. But I had to do it. It was the only way forward. For me. For my sanity. My mind flashed to the day I'd walked across that stage at graduation, feeling so proud and confident in my achievements, only to be slapped with the realization that I was never going to be enough for them. They never saw me. They only saw what I could give them. They never noticed the sacrifices I made, how I held everything together quietly while they played their roles. I shook it off and grabbed my phone again, scrolling through the messages from my mom. The last one from her was a simple one-liner: "We're still having trouble. We might need you soon." The kind of message that used to make me feel like I couldn't say no. But now, the guilt barely touched me. I typed back, "I can't help right now. I have my own responsibilities." And I sent it without hesitation. The silence in my apartment felt louder than it ever had before. For a moment, I considered calling them, just to explain. To tell them that this was the only way. That I had to do this for me, even though it would destroy them. But I didn't. I couldn't. They would never understand, and I wasn't going to beg for their approval anymore. Another text came in, this time from Matt again. It was more frantic, more pleading. Please. You have to know something. We've been getting notices about the loans. Something's wrong. Why is this happening now? I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. The only thing I could do now was wait for them to realize the truth, and when they did, I wouldn't be there to clean up the mess. The sound of a new email notification broke the silence. It was another update from Andrew. The liquidation will be complete by the end of the month. You'll be fully free of all obligations by then. Stay strong. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. I felt a rush of relief, mixed with something else I couldn't quite place. Regret? Maybe, but I didn't have the luxury of second-guessing anymore. I wasn't going back. Not for them. Not for anyone. The business was falling apart, and I was watching from the sidelines, knowing that I had finally freed myself. I wasn't surprised when the call came. They'd been building up to it for weeks, acting like nothing was wrong, like everything was fine. But I could feel the storm brewing, and now it had hit. Emily, my father's voice crackled over the line, cold and sharp. "We need to talk. Get over here." Now, I didn't hesitate. I knew what this was about. It was time. The reckoning had begun. When I arrived, the atmosphere in the house felt different. Quiet. Tense. The usual clutter of papers and old furniture was replaced by neatly arranged financial documents, everything laid out on the table like a goddamn tribunal. My father, my mother, and Matt were already sitting at the table, their eyes fixed on me as I walked in. "Sit down," my father said, his tone commanding, the usual distance between us now thick with something else, something darker. I sat across from them, my hands clasped in my lap, not saying a word. I could feel the weight of their eyes on me. They'd figured it out, and now they were waiting for me to confirm it. "Let's get straight to it," my father said, looking me dead in the eye. "Are you the one who's been silently supporting this business? Are you the reason we've been able to keep everything afloat?" The room went still, the only sound the faint rustle of paper. I could feel the coldness in my chest. I'd known this moment was coming. I could have denied it, played dumb, but I wasn't going to. I wasn't going to lie to them anymore. Not after everything. I looked at my father, his face hard, angry, desperate for an answer. My mother's expression was unreadable, but her eyes were sharp, accusing. Matt looked like he was about to break apart at the seams. I could feel his desperation too. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady, no hesitation. It was me. The silence in the room was deafening. My father blinked a few times, like he couldn't process what I'd just said. Matt's jaw dropped, and my mom's face twisted, confusion and anger bubbling up at the same time. They hadn't expected this. "You," my father finally muttered. His voice was a mix of disbelief and something else, hurt maybe. "All these years, you've been the one?" I nodded. "Yeah, I've been funding your business. Without anyone knowing. All those deals, the properties, the loans. I've been the one making sure you didn't go under." "You?" Matt shook his head like he didn't believe me. "You're telling me all this time we've been scraping by, struggling with everything, and you are the one keeping it all together?" I felt a small twist of something sharp in my gut, but I didn't let it show. "That's exactly what I'm telling you, Matt. Every time you wondered why the business didn't collapse, it was because I was paying for it. I've been pulling the strings behind the scenes." My mother stood up suddenly, pacing, her hands wringing together. "I don't understand. Why would you do this? Why wouldn't you tell us?" You've been helping us all this time, and now I didn't want you to know, I said, cutting her off. You didn't care about me. You never did. You never saw me as anything other than a bank, a resource to keep you all comfortable. But I wasn't going to keep pretending I didn't know that. I was just done. The anger in her face deepened. We cared about you. You're our daughter. How could you hide this from us? It wasn't about hiding it, I shot back, standing up now, my hands shaking with the force of my words. It was about surviving. I did it because you wouldn't. Because you didn't see me as anything but your financial backup. You think I wanted to keep doing this? I wanted to help you all, but I couldn't keep being the one who held everything together while you tore me down. There was a brief silence as they processed what I'd said. My father didn't speak for a long time, his hands clenched into fists on the table. I could see him fighting to keep control. But then he finally said, his voice low and measured, "You're telling me you've been doing all this and we never knew? And you never said a word." I nodded again, my voice quieter now, but firm. "Yeah, I've been the one who bailed you out every time. And every time, I was treated like a failure, a burden. You all wanted me to be more, but I could never do enough. You didn't care about my degree, my job, or my future. All you cared about was what I could give you. And I finally got tired of it. I couldn't keep doing it anymore." Matt opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but then he closed it again, like the weight of everything had just hit him. My mother stood still, her hands shaking, trying to hold on to some semblance of control. I didn't care. I didn't feel bad for them. "I never asked for any of this," I said, my voice more even now, like the calm after a storm. "But I did it because I thought that was what you needed, what you wanted. But now I can't. I won't." I looked around the room, seeing their disbelief, their confusion, their betrayal. I felt it too, but it was a different kind of betrayal, the one I had carried for years. They didn't get it, but I was done trying to make them understand. The silence in the room was suffocating. My father's face twisted between disbelief and anger, his fists clenched so tightly on the table his knuckles turned white. Matt was pacing, muttering under his breath like he couldn't process the magnitude of what I was saying. My mother had stopped pacing and was now staring at me, her mouth open in shock, her eyes brimming with the same guilt-tripped tears she always used to manipulate me. But none of it mattered anymore. I exhaled slowly, the weight of everything I had said still hanging heavy in the air. I could feel their anger rising, their need for answers, but I wasn't about to back down. Not this time. "I'm pulling my investments," I said, my voice steady. "All of them. The money's already in the process of being liquidated, and there's no turning back. I won't be involved with the business anymore. You're on your own." The room froze. My dad's face hardened into something that looked almost like a mask. Matt stopped pacing and stood still, his jaw clenched, like he couldn't decide if he wanted to scream or collapse. My mother's face went pale, the color draining from her cheeks. "Emily, please," my father said, his voice low, desperate. "You can't do this. We're family. You've been there for us all these years. This is the time we need you the most. I need you. Don't do this now." I almost laughed. He was still trying to pull me back into the same manipulative cycle. "I was there," I said, the bitterness creeping into my voice. "I was there for you when no one else was, when I was just a financial resource. When I was made to feel like the only value I had was the money I could give. But I've had enough, Dad. You never saw me as anything more than a bank account. I'm not doing this anymore." "Please," he said again, leaning forward, his hands flat on the table. "We can work something out. We're family, Emily. Don't you care about us? Don't you care about what happens to everything we've built?" "I care about what happens to me," I snapped, the frustration spilling out. "I've cared about you for years. But every time I tried to show you that, you made it clear that I wasn't enough unless I was contributing something, unless I was a resource for you. You never understood the sacrifices I made, and you never saw how much this hurt. So now, you'll have to figure it out without me." I could feel my father's gaze on me, almost burning into my skin, like he was still searching for something. The disbelief in his eyes made it hard to keep my composure, but I refused to break. "You don't mean that," he said, his voice cracking just a little. "I'm your father. You can't just walk away from everything we've built. You're my daughter. Then maybe you should have treated me like one, I replied, my words sharper now. Not a paycheck. Not an ATM you could tap into whenever you needed a bailout. I'm not going to keep living my life like that. I'm done. Matt couldn't hold it in anymore. He slammed his hand against the table, making the papers scatter. Why? Why now, Emily? Why the hell are you doing this now? After everything? You've always been there when things went south. You've always helped us. Why are you throwing all of that away? I stood up slowly, my hands still clenched in front of me, my eyes on my brother. He looked broken, like he couldn't believe the person standing in front of him was the same sister who had helped him out of countless tight spots. You wanted me to be independent, Matt. You and Dad both did, I said, my voice softening just enough to make the point. You never treated me like I had my own life. You always expected me to put you first. Well, now I am. I'm choosing my independence. I'm choosing me. And that's what you wanted, isn't it? Matt opened his mouth, but no words came out. His expression flickered between anger and something else, something I couldn't quite place. It was too late for him to realize what he had done, too late for apologies. I'm not going back to what we had, I continued, my voice firm, my back straight. But I will help you. If you want to survive, I'll help you get back on your feet, but it'll be on your own terms. You'll have to make it on your own. You won't get another penny from me. I turned toward the door, my pulse racing, but I didn't look back. I knew they wanted more from me, but I wasn't giving it. Not anymore. The silence behind me was almost suffocating as I reached the door. I heard my father's voice, quieter this time, filled with a final plea. Emily, please. Please reconsider. I didn't answer. I opened the door and walked out, leaving them to pick up the pieces of their empire, just like they've left me to pick up the pieces of mine for years. The weight that had been crushing my chest for so long started to lift. I was free. For the first time in my life, I was free. It didn't take long for the fallout to hit. I didn't have to watch the business fall apart in real time. I could feel it. The phone calls, the messages, the pleading. They came every day, one after another. I ignored most of them. I couldn't be the safety net anymore. Not for them. Not for anyone. But it was inevitable. My father, of course, couldn't accept it. One morning, I was at my desk, already deep into work, when my phone buzzed. I saw his name and almost didn't pick up. But I did. It was the last thing I would do for him. Emily, my father's voice was strained, his usually steady tone now frayed. I need your help. We're in deep. The business it's going under. I don't know how much longer we can keep the doors open. You have to do something. You've always helped us out. Please, we're at the end of the line here. I leaned back in my chair, letting the words settle. My chest tightened, but there was no pity left for him. No regret. I had made my choice, and it was final. No, I said, my voice steady. I'm not doing it. I can't fix this anymore. You don't understand. We'll lose everything. The house, the business, your mother, Matt, they'll be devastated. That's your problem now, I said, letting the words sink in. You need to figure it out without me. You've always asked for help when things got tough. But I can't keep being the one who saves you. I've given you everything I had, and it wasn't enough. So I'm done. There was a long pause. I could hear his breathing on the other end, like he was struggling to find the right words, the right way to make me cave. But I wasn't going to. I am your family, he said, the desperation creeping into his voice. You can't just leave us like this. Please. I closed my eyes, the weight of what I was doing almost making my chest ache. But there was nothing left for me to give. I'm sorry, I said, softer now, but still firm. I can't be that for you anymore. You've got to stand on your own. The line went silent, and I hung up without waiting for him to respond. I could almost feel his frustration, his disbelief, hanging in the air. But it wasn't my problem anymore. The next call came a few hours later, this time from my mother. Her voice was tight, shaky. I could hear the tears she was holding back. You can't be serious, Emily. You're really just going to let us lose everything, she said, her words clipped and full of hurt. After all we've done for you. After everything we've sacrificed for you, and this is how you repay us. I let her talk, each word digging deeper into me, but none of it was enough to make me change my mind. The guilt, the shame, they'd been washed away by the relief I felt in finally cutting the cord. She didn't see it. She never would. You don't get it, I said calmly, though the knot in my stomach was twisting tight. I've given you everything, every bit of myself, and you never saw me. You never cared about anything except what I could do for you. So now you're going to have to figure it out on your own. I'm done being your fallback. Emily, don't do this. Please. She was almost pleading now. We're your family. We need you. You've never treated me like family, I said, my voice growing colder. You've treated me like a resource. I'm not your ATM. I'm not going to save you again. I hung up before she could say anything more. I didn't need to hear it. The next call came a few hours after that, and it was Matt. His voice was frantic, urgent, like he couldn't stand not knowing what was happening. Emily, what's going on? We can't keep doing this. Dad's trying everything, but it's not working. You've got to help us out. We can't. I'm not helping, I said, interrupting him. I'm not coming back, Matt. You wanted me to be independent, and now I am. This is what you wanted. This is the price you pay. I could feel the frustration in his voice, but I wasn't going to back down. You can't do this. You're letting everything fall apart. This is your fault, too. I felt a quick flash of anger, but I didn't let it control me. No, Matt. You let it fall apart. You and Dad both. You never once cared about how I felt or what I was sacrificing. All I ever was to you was a solution. Now you'll have to solve your own problems. I'm done. There was a heavy pause. When he spoke again, it was quieter. I don't understand, Emily. You've always been there. Why no? Because I have to be, I said. You both wanted me to be independent. Well, now I am. I can't keep carrying you. I hung up, not waiting for him to respond. The phone calls stopped after that. The business continued to sink. I knew it would. But for the first time in years, I felt something I'd never known before: freedom. I kept going with my law career, throwing myself into the work, focusing on building something for myself. There was no guilt in it, no more responsibility, no more dragging the weight of my family's problems on my shoulders. I had nothing to prove anymore. I wasn't their daughter who existed only to bail them out. I was Emily, a lawyer with her own life, her own future. And that felt better than anything I'd ever felt in that house. I was finally free. A few months had passed since I made the choice to sever all ties. I'd buried myself in my work at the firm, not just because it was the smart thing to do, but because it was the first time I'd ever truly been able to build something that was just mine. The legal world had started to take notice of me, too. I'd been featured in one of the top legal magazines, an article profiling up-and-coming lawyers who had managed to rise to the top, all on their own. My picture was there, staring back at me, a stark reminder of how far I had come since that graduation day. The caption beneath my photo read, Emily Clark, breaking through on her own, after cutting ties with a family business she once kept afloat. I hadn't expected the recognition, but I took it. I deserved it. I had earned every bit of it. No one had handed me this career, this success. It was mine, built from the ground up. But the most surprising part of all of this wasn't the magazine feature. It was the slow shift in how people saw me. My family was rebuilding, of course they were. They had no other choice, but they weren't the untouchable empire they once were. They were struggling in a way that wasn't visible to the outside world, but I could see it. I could feel it from the occasional call or message. They weren't asking for money anymore, but they were trying to reach me, trying to make things right in some way. And somehow, they started to see me differently. I didn't know what to feel about it. A part of me wanted to say fuck them, and I still did, in a way, but there was another part of me that couldn't entirely ignore the fact that they were finally seeing me. Really seeing me. For the first time, they were acknowledging the person I had become. Then, one day, the phone rang. My father's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but I did, because I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't running from these calls. Emily, he said, his voice sounding different, more careful, more respectful. I've been thinking a lot about everything, about how things went down. And I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you've done. You've built something for yourself. I paused, unsure how to respond. My dad hadn't said that to me in a long time. It had never felt like pride before. It had always been about his expectations, his demands. But this time, it felt genuine. Maybe he finally understood. Thanks, I said, keeping my tone neutral. I've worked hard for it. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, like he was weighing his next words. I wish we'd seen you more. Wish I'd seen you more, you know? It's just, you never let us in. But I get it now. What you were doing. I get it. I didn't say anything right away. There was a part of me that wanted to ask him why it had taken all this for him to get it, but I didn't. It wasn't worth it anymore. I had already moved on. I'm glad you understand, I said quietly. But I'm not going back. I've built my own life now. This is who I am. I know, he said, the weight of his words hanging in the air. And I'm proud of you. I didn't know how to respond to that. It wasn't the apology I'd wanted. It wasn't the full reckoning, the closure that I thought I needed. But it was something. And for once, that was enough. When the call ended, I sat there for a minute, looking out the window at the city skyline. I'd built something. From scratch. No help from them. No one to rely on but myself. I hadn't just escaped them. I had created a life that had nothing to do with their demands, their expectations. And that was worth more than any recognition they could ever give me. They could rebuild their empire. But I had already built mine. And it was mine on my terms. I'd never go back to the way things were. No amount of pride from them could change that.